David was born in 1926 in Isleworth, Middlesex. He joined Cambridge University in 1945, where he obtained a degree in natural sciences. In 1947, Sir David joined the Royal Navy, post which he immersed himself in editing science books for children before finally joining the BBC. At BBC, he went on to form his own department, the Travel and Exploration Unit, which allowed him to continue with Zoo Quest as well as produce many documentaries. But the thirst for knowledge which defined Sir David sought him to pursue a postgraduate degree in social anthropology from the London School of Economics in the early 1960s before rejoining the BBC in 1965. It was during these years that he wrote and narrated several award-winning TV programs on anthropology and natural history, such as The Living Planet, The Private Life of Plants, Life in the Undergrowth, etc. Sir David was knighted in 1985 and has received many honours such as the UNESCO's Kalinga Prize, the Michael Faraday Prize, Fellowship of the Royal Society, as well as several Emmys and BAFTA awards. Not to forget at least 20 plant and animal species that have been named after him. In an age when the world is increasingly feeling the effects of climate change and biological aberrations, Sir David is being recognized by the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust for being a powerful and persuasive voice on the need to listen to warnings about ecological disasters. His name was selected by an illustrious jury chaired by former President, the late Shri Pranab Mukherjee. The Indira Gandhi Peace Prize is being bestowed upon Sir David for his tireless work to awaken humankind to the need to preserve and protect our planet's biodiversity and the necessity of living in a sustainable and harmonious way with all of life, and to stop being, in his words, a plague on earth.
On behalf of Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, I welcome you to the award presentation ceremony of the Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, Disarmament and Development for the year 2019. This is a much coveted event which takes place before an invited audience with due ceremony. However, owing to the unusual circumstances due to the COVID pandemic, we are conducting this year's ceremony virtually. We begin with welcome address by Srimati Sonia Gandhi, Chairperson, Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust.
Sir David Attenborough, Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, trustees of the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, members of the jury of the Indira Gandhi Prize. Friends, I am delighted that the Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, Disarmament and Development for 2019 is being formally conferred on Sir David Attenborough today. Sir David is already well known to us all through his prodigious creativity in educating humankind with brilliant films and books about the natural world. And he has, of late, been the most sensible voice warning us that we, more than anything else, are responsible for the accelerating threat to the environment on our planet. In essence, for well over half a century, Sir David has been one of nature's most staunch conscience keepers. Indira Gandhi, too, was one throughout her life. She was born in a political family, but saw herself as a child of nature, developing a special affinity for mountains, forests, birds, and animals from an early age. Along with the Quaker associate of Mahatma Gandhi, Horace Alexander, she was one of the founder members of Delhi's Bird Watching Society as long ago as 1950. Subsequently, As Prime Minister, she became an unwavering champion of environmental protection long before that cause had become popular both in India and abroad. Her momentous speech at the first ever UN conference on human environment at Stockholm in June 1972 has become a milestone in the global environmental discourse. It was in this speech that she first elaborated on the interconnectedness of peace, disarmament, and development with environmental conservation. Her view was forthright. Without meaningful disarmament, you cannot have enduring peace. And without protecting the environment, development will simply not be sustainable. In that speech, she was one of the first world leaders to draw attention to changing weather patterns, something now accepted as a hard reality. Indira Gandhi was acutely conscious of the fact that she was Prime Minister of a developing country, a country that needed to create jobs and tackle poverty. India needed to accelerate the pace of investment and to expand its physical infrastructure. But at the same time, Indira Gandhi was very sensitive to the imperative of maintaining what she would often call ecological balance. Her political innings were a search for that balance and the journey of educating her colleagues and the people to preserve that balance. Her Stockholm address ended with an invocation from the Upper Way, and I quote, "What of thee I dig out, let that quickly grow over, let me not hit thy vitals or thy heart," unquote. It is not a surprise, therefore, to find that the legal and institutional framework India now has for protecting its wonderful biodiversity has been put in place during her tenure as Prime Minister. It bears a personal imprimatur. And what can I say about Sir David himself that is already not known? To say that he is the world's leading authority on the natural world is to state the obvious. To say that his passion has been inspiring is also to reiterate what we all acknowledge. He has legions of admirers across the world, and age has not dimmed his zeal, neither has humanity's willful disregard for what he says. He has kept going relentlessly, educating, enlightening, and sensitizing millions of people. I well remember how excitedly Indira Gandhi would watch his documentaries with us and encourage her grandchildren to do so. I'm not sure whether Sir David had ever met her, but whether or not he had, the fact remains that when environmental protection has become all the more imperative, when climate change and continued loss of biodiversity is threatening livelihoods and public health, indeed life on Earth, there could not have been a more appropriate choice for an award in her name than Sir David Attenborough. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I will now read out the citation, first in Hindi, then in English. इंदिरा गांधी स्मारक न्यास का अंतर्राष्ट्रीय निर्णायक मंडल अपनी फिल्मों और पुस्तकों के माध्यम से प्राकृत दुनिया के चमत्कारों को प्रत्यक्ष करने हेतु अपने जीवन काल में संभवतः किसी अन्य व्यक्ति की तुलना में अधिक कार्य करके पूरी दुनिया में पीढ़ियों तक लोगों को शिक्षित और उनका मनोरंजन करके पृथ्वी पर मौजूदा जैव विविधता को सुरक्षित और संरक्षित करने की आवश्यकता के प्रति मानवता को जागरूक करने के उनके अथक प्रयास स्थायी और सामंजस्यपूर्ण तरीके से जीवन जीने की आवश्यकता पर जोर देते हुए प्रकृति के खिलाफ नहीं बल्कि उसके साथ काम करने की महत्ता को उजागर करने के उनके अनवरत प्रयासों के लिए सर डेविड एटनबरो को शांति, निरस्त्रीकरण और विकास के लिए वर्ष 2019 का इंदिरा गांधी पुरस्कार प्रदान करता है। The International Jury of the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust has awarded Sir David Attenborough for a lifetime of doing more to reveal the wonders of the natural world and study under privileged for educating and entertaining generations of people through his films and books, for tirelessly working to awaken humankind to the need to preserve and protect the biodiversity of our planet, and advocating the necessity to live a sustainable and harmonious way of life, working with rather than against nature. The prize is being presented to Sir David Attenborough by Dr. Manmohan Singh, former Prime Minister of India. In the absence of a physical ceremony, since the trophy cannot be handed over, we are displaying it on your screens. The trophy is a square piece of banded hematite jasper, the same stone which is
presenting the trophy. Unmute.
She is announced.
Yes, sir, you can speak, sir.
David Attenborough, respected Sonia ji, no.
You can continue.
Members of the jury of the Indira Gandhi Prize, trustees of the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, friends. To begin with, I would like to pay tribute to the memory of our former President, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, who chaired the jury for the prize for 3 years and who passed away last month. It was under his guidance that last November the prize was awarded to Sir David. We are very sorry to miss him on this occasion. I am honored to have been able to symbolically present the Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, Disarmament and Development to Sir David Attenborough. This award today is a unique conjugation because we know how much our late Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi herself, was concerned and involved with the protection of the environment and the natural world. As we have just heard from the chairperson,
Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. There can therefore be no more deserving recipient of the award at this time when the world is gripped by growing anxiety over the state of our environment and our planet. If anyone who can be described as a living legend in the context of the natural world, it is Sir. Over 7 decades, he has been, if I can put it in this way, the human voice of nature. He has delighted us, entertained us, informed us, and united us with nature in all its glories. Animate or inanimate, there is nothing on earth that has escaped his attention, and there is little that has not been better understood for the knowledge and experience he has brought to bear on it. Through the medium of films, so many of which have been prize-winning creations, books, articles, talks, he has vividly brought life for millions upon millions around the world, from children to aging adults, the wonders, beauties, and mysteries of the natural world. In recent times, has become one of the most vocal and effective advocates of environmental protection, raising his voice against the wanton destruction of the natural world in the name of progress and the seemingly insatiable needs of the human race. He has warned of disaster if things turn around, and he has solutions to offer. I understand that in the coming months he is releasing a documentary, A Life on Our Planet, A Life on Our Plant, which he describes as his witness statement and offers us hope that, as he puts it, human beings can work with nature rather than against nature. But it doesn't need an epidemic to tell us that we are not in good shape. Climate change, the assault on the oceans, the pollution of the atmosphere, the junk floating about in space, the reduction of forest cover, the extinction of life in rivers, the reduction of natural habitat for any life other than humans, all this is evident to anyone who has eyes to see. To be sure, there is an acute dilemma here. Millions people live in abject poverty. Millions around the world do not have enough food, clean water, and surroundings, a minimum acceptable standard of living. In the name of development, nature bears the brunt with its long-term crippling effects on that very quality of life we are trying to improve. But like Sir David, I believe that it is possible for us to respect boundaries, to be aware always of the costs of economic development, to refrain from excesses, from ignorant or willful actions that ultimately rebound on us. In India, during the time that I was Prime Minister, we were conscious of our duty to accelerate economic development and raise the standard of living of our people, especially those in poverty. This is, after all, the first priority of any government. At the same time, we were very selective in allowing projects that impacted the wilderness or the habitat of wildlife. Indeed, we were criticized by industrialists and those who thought we were going to being too restrictive. But I believe that if a proper balance is not firmly held, the results are deleterious and self-defeating. We were also an active voice in international forums and discussions on issues concerning the environment, and I like to think we made positive contributions to the protection of the planet. I hope this award, one among the many that Sir David has received in recognition of his work, will help take the message of Sir David's life and work further. It's a message that needs to be heeded across the world by leaders who make policies and by the people who elect them or influence them in other ways. I look forward greatly to hearing him deliver his acceptance speech. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now request Sir David Attenborough to kindly render his acceptance speech.
Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, Dr. Manmohan Singh, members of the jury and trustees of the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, ladies and gentlemen, I am greatly honored to be awarded this celebrated and most distinguished prize, and I give you my most profound thanks. It is a great privilege to address you all. Are you hearing me all clearly? I hope so.
Yes, sir. Please.
Would you wish me to start again?
No, sir, we've heard you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Our world today is heading towards a major crisis. It's one unlike any other that humanity has faced in all history. It's not a national crisis, one which a single society can solve by a revolution, whether violent or peaceful. It's not even an international one, such as those that have erupted between nations and have, within living memory, only been resolved after dreadful destruction and appalling suffering. It is a global one that nations of the world are now facing together, and it's one which has its roots deep in the history of humanity. 10,000 years ago, human beings who until that time had been wanderers with no permanent habitation started to settle down. They ploughed up grasslands and then planted them with the crops that they wanted to eat. They felled forests in order to make space for their homes, their workshops, their factories of one kind or another, and eventually great cities. They killed animals because they felt threatened by them or because they wanted to eat them. They learned how to venture out onto the sea, and over the centuries, they devised increasingly efficient ways of collecting the fish that swarmed there. In short, human beings started to take over the world. Over the centuries, our numbers have steadily increased. And then suddenly, around 200 years ago, that growth began to accelerate. And it continues to grow more and more swiftly. It happened in my lifetime. I'm now 94 years old, and there are more than 3 times as many people on Earth as there were when I was born. Humanity has overrun the planet. The consequences for the natural world have been devastating. Consider these facts. We have now felled half of the tropical forests in the world. Half the coral reefs, the richest environments in the seas and nurseries for many oceanic fish, are now dead. Of the mass of mammals alive today, 96% consists of ourselves and the livestock that we rear in order to feed ourselves. All other species of mammals, from elephants to mice, from bats to tigers, has been reduced to just 4%. We have taken over the natural world and we are destroying it. Yet we depend upon the natural world for the oxygen we breathe and for every mouthful of food we eat, whether it's vegetable or animal. We've cut down vast tracts of the natural forests that once covered so much of the planet's lands. We're scouring the seas with such technical efficiency and ingenuity that we have annihilated entire fish populations. We're burning fossil fuels and generating greenhouse gases in such quantities that the whole Earth is now warming. Ice caps are melting, deserts are spreading, sea levels are rising and threatening to drown many coastal cities, and the territories of entire nations may well be lost. We are now putting at risk the continuation of the natural processes on which we ourselves depend for our very lives. We must change our ways, and we must do so swiftly and globally. But success will only come if all the nations of the world agree to act together and to help one another. This will not be easy. We have to change from being nationalists and become internationalists. And that, for all of us, will involve giving as well as taking. Politicians will only do that if they have the support for doing so from those who put them in power, and who could remove them if they fail to live up to their promises. But electorates will only support such international actions if they understand the problems. Why the seas cannot be plundered indefinitely. Why the continued destruction of the world's forests will lead to catastrophe. Why the extinction of individual species could weaken the complex fabric of our ecosystems. Why we must stop using fossil fuels and instead take the energy we need directly from natural renewable resources, from the wind, the sea, and from the ultimate source of virtually all energy, the sun that shines on us all. As one begins to consider these issues, it becomes clear that over the past centuries and still today, different nations have made different contributions to the problems that now face this world. There have been, and there still are, givers and takers. How can such inequalities be evened out? Consider, for example, biodiversity, the huge richness of species, both animals and plants, that live on our planet beside us. The wealth, the strength, and the resilience of the natural world depends on this biodiversity. Economists know very well that an important factor in maintaining the strength of any financial portfolio is its diversity. Reducing that diversity is a dangerous thing for a financier to do, something that could lead to disaster and collapse. But that, of course, is what industrialized societies, in enriching themselves, have been doing to biodiversity of the world for the past 200 years or more. By contrast, many nations which are less industrialized still retain much of their biodiversity, and that benefits the entire planet. How can this disbalance in contributions to the health of the world be translated into economic terms? How can we develop a common currency, you might say, that would enable the developed world to pay this huge ecological debt? How do those nations who still retain vast expanses of rainforest, the richest of all terrestrial ecosystems, be rewarded for the huge ecological contribution that they continue to make to the world's biological health? Or what of the health of the oceans upon which we all depend? How do you determine the different demands and contributions made by nations whose territories and marine policies are of key importance in ensuring their well-being? These are problems that economists worldwide, and certainly in my own country, are wrestling with as a matter of urgency. Answers must be found if we are to solve the world's problems and deal with the dangers that now face this world. The United Nations tells us that the majority of people on the planet are now urbanized. That means that most of us are, to some degree, cut off from the natural world. So it may not be easy for all of us to understand the complexity of the ways in which nature operates. But broadcasting can help with that problem. Television these days can take you to every part of the world, no matter how remote, and can show you how that part of the world works. It can revive that connection with the natural world that was our birthright when we all lived close to it and were part of it. It can show how and why things can easily go wrong if their workings are not understood. And it can explain how errors can be put right and disasters avoided. If only nations would cease their arguments and work together to find solutions. In short, it can explain how the Earth's problems can be solved if there is understanding and cooperation between nations, if there is peace. I have spent my working life making television programs for the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. It has a motto: nation shall speak peace unto nation. If I'd been given this Nobel Award, this Peace Prize, because I have in some way contributed to the spreading of that understanding and enabled peoples everywhere to see something of the glories of the natural world, its infinite variety and its complexities, its problems and its beauties, the joy, the solace and deep inspiration it can bring, then I am indeed very proud of that. So I thank you again most profoundly for this great prize and the honor it brings. May I add just one small postscript. 56 years ago, when I was a young television producer working in the BBC's London studios, a distinguished Indian politician came to visit us to see how this new means of mass communication, television, actually worked, what its problems and possibilities were. She also asked to see how we operated outside London, and I was given the privilege of escorting her to Birmingham, 120 miles or so away. On the long drive through the night there and back, she told me something of the huge problems of broadcasting to such an immense and varied nation as India, whose citizens speak such a multitude of mutually incomprehensible languages. It was a huge privilege to listen to her. Her name, of course, was Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and I treasure her memory. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Sir David, for your very thoughtful presentation. It reflects the sweep of your vision, the depth of your understanding, the wisdom of your advice. It has given us much to ponder. These are ideas the world deserves to hear loud and clear. We hope this award will help in its own way to further its reach. Ladies and gentlemen, we now conclude the award presentation ceremony. On behalf of Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, I thank you all for being with us. Namaskar.